What is up, everybody? I am joined by Andrew today. I'm your host, Zach, and we have episode 2 of the Cornell Octagon collaboration show. Still no name, no progress, actually, Andrew, but how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing so good. It feels like before the first UFC pay-per-view, we got to get a name down, but we'll roll with this for now. I'm doing good, excited to talk some fights. It was bad, no MMA last weekend, so we're back at it this week in the hikes.
I'm going to be honest. So I went to start this up and get into some sort of intro, and I was thinking about how to start up the podcast. And I was like, dude, I have no idea what to call this. So I'm kind of struggling a little bit, but whatever. Beside the point, we're here to break down UFC Houston, at least go over that main card, some big fights on that one. I know me and the Around the Octagon fellas kind of went through it the other day. So I'll give kind of my quick little cliff notes on some fights and let Andrew give his opinions and kind of give some counters, go back and forth on those a little bit. But before we do, there has been some general news amongst the MMA community. And the first of which is probably the biggest piece of news, is Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano was announced. And it seems like a lot of people are very excited. And I don't know if people actually are excited or if it's just smoke coming out, because I could not give less of a fuck about this fight, to be quite honest here with you, Andrew. I don't know if I'm on my own island. I don't know if it's disrespectful to say so. And if it is, please do tell me. But what are your thoughts on this fight?
It's certainly not disrespectful to say so. Look, Netflix is big, right? And I think we can acknowledge that, anything on Netflix is going to just get ridiculous viewers. Alex Honnold climbing the building in Taiwan 3 weeks ago had 40 million viewers. If you put anything on Netflix, people are going to watch it, right? So that is a big deal. But the actual fight, the X's and O's of the MMA, I could not give two shits about this. If you and I are on an island, then we're on an island together, because I don't think that, Ronda Rousey hasn't fought since 2016 when she got knocked out by Amanda Nunes in a minute and a half. Gina Carano didn't even fight in the UFC after a disagreement with Dana White. It's just ridiculous to me that we're promoting this as some lost fight that we're finally getting here. If Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather was 10 years late, this fight's 20 years late, because I agree. I just don't give a shit.
And you know what is really fucking annoying me about how this fight is being advertised from the get-go is they're trying to compare the numbers and make it a comparison to the UFC. And it's such a fucking bullshit comparison to stack whatever Netflix number this has next to it to whatever UFC numbered event. Of course, Netflix is in every household, around the world. And Netflix is a worldwide thing. So, of course, the numbers are going to beat out a UFC numbered event on Paramount. You would at least hope it does, because if it doesn't, then that's kind of a rough look for this whole fight in general.
Yeah, I agree. It might have crazy numbers. I know that Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, the third fight, I think had 9.8 million or 10 million viewers, which is obviously a lot for a women's boxing fight, regardless of how popular those two women are. So, look, I'm sure it'll do good numbers. Ronda Rousey at one time was the biggest name in MMA. We can acknowledge how important she was for the growth of women's mixed martial arts, and also acknowledge that she's literally 10 years past her last fight in the UFC. And she wanted to come back earlier, but she had problems with CTE in her brain. She wasn't cleared to fight. So I have absolutely no idea what's going on. Look, I'm a little curious to see what the undercard looks like. I can't decide whether or not there's two routes they could go. They could just go get all the old washed up legends. You could go get Tyron Woodley, Derek Brunson, all the people that have been cut. Charlton Almeida is probably going to be featured on this Netflix card if we're real with ourselves. Or they go the direction of go get some really sick prospects, because this card is going to generate a bunch of money, and put them on Netflix. I'll give the card a lot more respect if they do that, but I have no confidence that that's what Nikisa Badarian and MVP is going to do.
I mean, is Tyron Woodley going to be okay to fight after getting KO'd by Anderson Silva like that in that boxing match? I don't know, but that is the direction they'd probably go, and they'd probably co-main Tyron Woodley, because he is, they've worked with him a bunch in that MVP, and they also have Holly Holm under contract, don't they? So
she's been boxing. She's been professionally boxing, so I'm not sure. Look, I think the one name that I would actually like to see is Darren Till.
Yes. I can agree on that. But Holly Holm's been boxing under the MVP banner. So, her rights are twin.
Yeah, so she can fight MMA.
So technically, I believe she's under MVP. So, they could throw her on this card. Or I heard someone say this, and this is the only thing I thought interesting about the whole thing, is they're like, all right, well, if you actually wanted to market it, you probably could market it where Holly Holm gets the winner regardless, and just do it that way. And there you go. But in terms of like MMA, I just don't get what people get excited for about fights like this. Cause it's like, what does it mean? What does it matter who wins? And I don't really care who wins. Like, I don't care to see Ronda Rousey fight, but I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just too negative. Maybe I'm a negative guy. I don't know.
It's not a negative guy. Look, I think this, like, if this fight was happening on the White House card, I actually think there'd be some, like, not buzz around it, but like this would have been the perfect fight for the White House card. But I don't blame like some people online were like, oh, the UFC never gets anything done anymore. Like in this instance, I do not blame the UFC because the paycheck that Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano are going to get from Netflix is just nowhere near what they were going to get from the UFC, right? It's apples and oranges, and like that's not a fair comparison. So look, like I'm happy both those women are going to go get a paycheck. Of course, Ronda Rousey's influence on the sport cannot be understated, but yeah, I agree with you. Once it gets down to like the actual fight, I think it's going to be awful.
Yeah, no, I agree there, definitely. And moving on now, this is kind of less of a talking point or less of a discussion, but kind of something I wanted to note here. I watched the video and it was Demetrius Johnson and Arman Tsarukyan training together. And I thought it was just extremely, extremely interesting. Like for everyone listening, if you haven't watched that yet and you are an MMA fan, give it a listen. Arman is actually the man. I've grown to become a fan of Arman Tsarukyan, but one thing I find very interesting is he talked about who could out wrestle him at 155. And he said, now, no one. Now that Islam moved up, there's no one. But he just gives like the utmost respect to Islam Makhachev and a lot of respect to Arman Tsarukyan there. But kind of what I wanted to pick your brain about is, do you think like the wrestling between an Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev, is Arman on that level?
Yes. Short answer. Yeah, I do. I mean, I truly believe that there are two top lightweights in the world, and they're Ilia Topuria and Arman Tsarukyan. And I give Arman Tsarukyan a chance in that fight against Ilia Topuria because of his ground game. I understand Ilia has good jiu-jitsu. He looked decent on the ground against Charles, but I think Arman Tsarukyan on the ground is I think he is the best guy on the ground at 155 pounds. And just to bounce off your other point, which is a fantastic point, the Arman Tsarukyan PR team in the last 10 months has done an excellent job. He's been in grappling matches all over the place. He did the RAF. He did a couple matches for RAF. He did a BJJ match where he choked out like Shara Bullet or someone. He has done a great job of being in the press. And all press is good press right now for him because you have Dana White, who has continually shit on him and said, we do not want to be giving him a title shot right now. It feels like he's going to be on the sidelines for a Justin Gaethje, Ilia Topuria unification bout at 155 pounds. But I know there's rumors of Arman Tsarukyan wanting to grapple Mikey Musumeci on a UFC BJJ card. Just anything Arman's doing to stay in the news is good for Arman Tsarukyan. If he has to fight again and he has to fight Benoit Saint Denis, he has to fight Benoit Saint Denis. But I have been really, really impressed with Arman Tsarukyan, and particularly his PR in the last 8 months.
I think he's made himself into a star, to be quite honest. You see like the social media growth he's had. He's like gained almost like 100, I think it's like 400,000 followers without even fighting, which is just crazy growth there. And I think he's almost made himself undeniable to get the title shot after the Justin Gaethje Ilia Topuria fight, as if he couldn't even be more undeniable. And the question will be, does he want to take a fight just to take a fight because he doesn't want to be inactive until the winter or whenever that date really comes? But super interesting stuff there. And what do you make of the humility from Arman Tsarukyan, just kind of, acknowledging that now that Islam's gone, like, yes, I am the best grappler here?
The thing that's always confused me about people with Arman Tsarukyan is he has everything you'd want out of a fighter. He has a shtick, right? He has all this money. He sits on his private jets. He eats this caviar. He's a humble, nice guy. He's respected by his peers. Like, you're talking about the way Arman Tsarukyan speaks about Islam Makhachev. Look at the way Islam Makhachev speaks about Arman Tsarukyan. It's such a shame we didn't get that fight at UFC 311 last year, because I think both those guys acknowledge, like, their first fight, Arman's first fight in the UFC, is one of the most fun fights to watch on a technical basis. And another one of Arman's fights that I'll plug for any of you if you're like your late night, the Arman Tsarukyan Mateusz Gamrot fight, which he lost on the cards. I don't think he lost that fight, but he lost it on the scorecards, is one of the most interesting, aesthetically pleasing, like, grappling matches in the world. So look, I'm happy for Arman Tsarukyan. I agree. He is a humble, good guy. He clearly deserves this shot at 155 pounds. It's a travesty he's not fighting Ilia Topuria. It will be a complete travesty if we do not get to see Arman Tsarukyan fight Islam Makhachev or Ilya Topuria. That would just be a total blunder at 155 pounds. But look, I'm all in on the Arman Tsarukyan train. I picked him to be champion at the end of the year. So, hey, I love that we're talking about it.
Yo, imagine if none of those three guys ever fought each other, just like how fucking disappointing that would be. Like, oh God. I don't even want to think about it. Don't even want to think about it. Moving on. UFC 327. I've seen 2 fights rumored for this. Like, I've seen people reporting today that Jiri Prochazka versus Carlos Ulberg is booked for 327. I saw a couple days ago that it was Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira. Doesn't mean it can't be both, but right now there's no title book, so I don't think that you'd have both, especially right before this White House card. So first, I guess we'll talk about first, what do you make of the potential matchup between Carlos Ulberg and Jiri Prochazka for UFC 327?
Now, I've kind of been reading the same stuff and hearing the same thing, kind of talking to my people. I know that the one wrinkle, so obviously it goes without saying that if those two are fighting for an undisputed title at 205 pounds, a vacant undisputed title at 205 pounds, Alex Pereira is moving up to heavyweight. I actually like.
Does that mean that we're likely going to see a vacant or an interim title fight between Cyril Gane and Alex Pereira?
I mean, I think John Jones is there. Like, I don't know. I can't. There are 2 scenarios. So let's say Alex Pereira is moving up to 200 to heavyweight, which I think is actually right now with the Tom Aspinall problem. He is nowhere near fighting shape. He's not even training yet. He might be done for the year. Like, he might not fight in 2026, right? So with him out, I would really hope they don't strip him because of the grace he gave John, but maybe they do. You either have Alex fighting Cyril Gane or fighting John Jones on the White House. So one of those, I actually don't have a preference there. I think either one is fun. And like we talked about last week, heavyweight is so abysmal right now that any jolt you can give that division, give it. Alex Pereira moving up, fantastic. As for the Jiri Prochazka Carlos Ulberg matchup, I love it. I know that the one wrinkle is Yuri's baby is due like the week of UFC 327. His baby's due the second week of April. Second week of April is UFC 327. So he had tweeted like, look, I'll fight any other time except this one weekend in April. It maybe if you can influence him with an undisputed title shot against a guy on Carlos Ulberg, maybe he signs up for that. But from like a pure MMA standpoint, it's a wildly fascinating fight.
And no, and I heard the talk about the baby coming, and that's been said for a while now. So that's why I still don't get why I'm seeing rumors now that it's booked, right? Because like I saw this floated a while ago. I saw Jiri say what he said, and that's why this fight wasn't booked. At least I thought. Now I'm seeing it reported that it's booked again. So I don't even know what's going on there, but I kind of want your thoughts again from just the fight from a stylistic standpoint, because I know it is one that you're fascinated in.
Look, I actually love it. I think Carlos Ulberg might be the best 205-pounder on the planet right now. The way he thoroughly dominated Dominic Reyes in 4 minutes and knocked him out like that, when you rewatch that fight, Reyes had absolutely nothing for Ulberg. The movement, the stance switching from Ulberg. He was shaky at the beginning of the year against Blachowicz, but we know how hard Blachowicz is to beat. And so when you have a guy who's that defensively sound and that movement against someone in Jiri Prochazka, who you know is going to come forward, it's the unstoppable force versus the immovable object. It's a fascinating fight at 205 pounds. For me, when I'm breaking down, I'd have to watch a lot of film on it to make a pick, but I would wonder how durable is Carlos Ulberg? Because as we saw from Jiri Prochazka twice last year against Khalil Roundtree and against Jamal Hill, like he eventually will land his offense, regardless of how good you are defensively. Khalil did a fantastic job for like 11 minutes of that fight and still got knocked out. So either Carlos has to stand his ground and try and knock out Jiri, which is, no one's done that except Poatan, or Carlos just has to move around and trust his durability. That, in my opinion, is the X factor. But if you're telling me that that's what we're going to get with Alex Pereira moving up to heavyweight, what a better way to headline Miami.
It's the gas tank as well of Carlos Ulberg that I'll be curious to see in this 5-round fight. Because you even look at Jiri Prochazka in his last fight against Khalil Roundtree, and like, was it the defense of Roundtree? Was it the gas tank of Roundtree? Like the body work, starts to play in, and Khalil just looked absolutely gassed in round 3, man. And again, this goes back to like fighting your type of fight. Because look at Khalil Roundtree in a 5-rounder against Jamal Hill, where you just walked him and you go all 5 rounds and you're feeling fine. 3 rounds against Jiri, he's fucking digging you into the body, and next thing you know, he can't breathe, and then he's falling over. I actually had a ticket on on Khalil Roundtree. That fight did hedge out going into round 3 though, so we were okay. But yeah, so I'm curious to see just how the gas tank of Ulberg looks over the course of 5 rounds, but I think he's just too defensively sound for Jiri, man. Like, I'm curious to see. Go on.
And that's what's fascinating to me is it's basically like how close is Carlos Ulberg to Alex Pereira? Because like what's so interesting about the matchup is basically everybody else at light heavyweight, Jiri can kind of just run through, right? The way he just ran through Rakic, he ran through Jamal Hill. He basically just absorbed all of Khalil's shots for 2 rounds and then just finished him. So the question for me is, but with Alex, Alex has the power to be able to knock out Jiri. And so in the first fight, it was kind of close early. In the second fight, Jiri kind of looked like the way Dominic Reyes looked against Ulberg last year. So the big question for me is like, is Jiri going to be in there going, I can't touch this guy. I'm seeing a ghost. He's moving around me. And we know how powerful Ulberg is. Or is Jiri just going to be able to impose as well? Because as you talked about last week, it's about who can make it their fight. But like, it's a fantastic fight between 2 of the best strikers in that division in another weak division that could use a jolt from another Jiri Prochazka title run or an exciting guy in Carlos Ulberg.
And what do you think about Magomed Ankalaev getting left out of the picture, assuming he is healthy to fight at least? Because, like, I get it, man. He just had the 1 title win against Alex Pereira, who still, he beat Alex Pereira, who we've seen knock out Jiri Prochazka multiple times. And then, obviously, he just got bulldozed in that last fight and hasn't had a win since. But, again, in terms of meritocracy, he's the one who's been at the pinnacle at least most recently. And it does feel a little strange that no one's even like mentioning his name at all. I just think it's because he's not liked at all. And that's the reason why we're not even hearing a mention of him in this talk.
I think it's tough. I think when you have a champion who loses like that quickly, it's hard to throw them into yet another title fight. And remember, this would not be Magomed's 2nd time contending for an undisputed title. It would be his 3rd because he had that blunder fight against Jan Blachowicz at 282 in December a couple of years ago. So look, if Alex Pereira leaves to heavyweight, Magomed Ankalaev is going to be in the mix at light heavyweight because he is simply one of the best 5 light heavyweights in the world. The question I would have is who would you match him up against? He's probably going to have to fight one of those guys coming off of a loss, a Jamal Hill, a Khalil Roundtree, because literally besides Jiri, Ulberg, and Magomed Ankalaev, the only other name that has like consistently been in the top 5 recently is Azamat Murzakanov, who's supposed to be fighting Paulo Costa. So 205's whack.
It's not happening. I'm just guessing. Just follow Costa's track record. It is very interesting. The one thing I will say is I don't think Jamal Hill deserves a Magomed Ankalaev fight, nor do I think you should want a Magomed Ankalaev fight or anyone towards the top of that division, to be quite honest. I think Jamal Hill kind of needs a little time, and I think he needs some opponents down on the rankings and needs to get his confidence back under him. But who am I to say? And who am I? I don't do the matchmaking either. Does the UFC want that? Like, do they want what's best for Jamal? I don't know. I have no fucking clue. But moving on a little bit, the other fight being rumored for UFC 327 and kind of just being rumored in general, Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira. Very, very, very interesting fight there. But there's multiple names as far as this flyweight division is concerned. Do you think Tatsuro Taira is the right name, or should it be Manel Kape?
It's tricky, and it looks that fight I feel like is closer to done than the other one, just based off of Manel Kape's Twitter and Tatsuro Taira's Twitter, which is both like Taira's like, all right, championship camp, we're ready to go, and Manel Kape being like, you fucking ran away from me, Joshua Van. They were kind of neck and neck. I think that Taira's win is probably a more impressive win, beating Brandon Moreno like that versus beating Brandon Royval like that, but actually, Taira lost to Brandon Royval. I don't know. It's close. I think it's a Japanese market play, quite honestly. Like, I think you're looking at it in the sense of we talked about this last week. Japan is an untapped market for the UFC, which is crazy to say. It's one of the 5, hottest beds for MMA in the world, but you've never had a UFC champion from Japan. And so an opportunity to have a UFC champion from Japan, and he's like 26, Taira's 25, 26 years old. They've clearly been invested in him for a long time. It doesn't shock me that they go the way of Taira. And the only other thing that I will bring up is, what is the one thing we have heard consistently from Dana White about championship matchmaking recently? You need to be available and consistent. And the one problem that Manel Kape has had, look, he's gotten back on this run. He's on this 3-fight win streak. He's looked great. But the one problem is he pulls out of fights consistently. He gets hurt consistently. He's broken his hand, his arm, his foot. Taira's going to show up, right? And so when you're looking at a champion, and then you're looking at like a Khamzat Chimaev situation right now, where he's not going to fight for, it's going to be 10 months basically in between fights, and he's holding the belt hostage. You're looking at Tatsuro Taira and you're going, hey, maybe that's not the worst idea in the world for our new champion. So it doesn't shock me, but they really could have gone either way.
Yeah, they can go either way. And in all honesty, I don't think you can complain from a meritocracy standpoint, as one deserves it really over the other. Both kind of comparable wins, fighting those upper echelon kind of guys, both won in pretty damn good fashion. So no complaints there. I'm fine either way they go. I think that the stylistic matchup between Tatsuro Taira and Joshua Van is extremely fascinating, just with that dominant forward pressure grappler and just Van's extremely high output. So like very, very excited to see how that fight will play out. So fine seeing that. Both fights I think are honestly bangers. Any flyweight fight, it's fine. It's going to be fun. I'm going to enjoy watching it.
Yeah, I do think that the one thing is really interesting about that is the one thing we've been looking for from Joshua Van to prove, and we were looking for that going into the Alejandro Pantoja fight, is like, how elite is he on the ground? We know how good he is on the feet. He boxed up Brandon Royval, one of the best strikers in the division, right? He's that good on the feet. But what everyone was asking, and what I believed he did not possess, was an ability on the ground, right? I don't know if Tatsuro Taira is the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu level of Alexandre Pantoja, but I know he's close. And so if Joshua Van is able to go out there and beat Tatsuro Taira, right? Guys like 19-1 with elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, does that change the way you look at a rematch between Joshua Van and Alexandre Pantoja? And on the flip side, if Joshua Van goes out there and gets blown up by Tatsuro Taira on the ground, we're all sitting here and going, that might be the worst champion in the history of the sport with this, fluke injury. So it's a fascinating fight. The one other question I have for you, and I'm curious to hear your opinion on this, is, so if Manel Kape is not getting this championship fight, and we think Alexandre Pantoja is going to be ready for the summer, would you book those two guys again in a rematch they fought earlier in your career, or would you make Kape fight somebody else? Because you and I both agree, when Pantoja is ready to go, he needs to fight for a championship. So I'm curious to hear your opinion on that.
Dude, I kind of want to pull up the flyweight rankings right now and just kind of see who's up there and where I would place Manel Kape. But I mean, when Pantoja's back, he's fighting for the belt, and that's really just it. And what even about Brandon Moreno's about to fight Loner Kavanaugh in a couple weeks. What if Loner Kavanaugh? What if Horiguchi? That's a good one. But what if Loner Kavanaugh goes out and beats up Brandon Moreno, and then that's a guy who they could just sneakily cut the line, and it seems like they want to. All signs point to Loner Kavanaugh can be a guy in this division. So something like that wouldn't shock me either if he goes out there and is able to put away Brandon Moreno, who's making kind of a quick turnaround after that fight against Tatsuro Taira, where he just didn't. I mean, round one, he had that inverted triangle, and we know how round two went, and he got finished. So, I don't know. This could be a decent spot for Loner Kavanaugh against Brandon Moreno, and what do they do with him?
Yeah, he's another name. And clearly, coming off of a knockout loss in Shanghai last year to Charles Johnson, who got knocked out, and they put him in this spot, main event on the road, Mexico City, against the most popular Mexican fighter in the sport. It's a massive opportunity.
I mean, he did look good up until he didn't in that fight. And he is a very high level prospect, but how can you say he looked good until he did? And at the end of the day, you got KO'd and you had the loss on your record. So that's what comes out of the fight. I don't know what much more else to add, but it is crazy that you get this matchup with Brandon Moreno now. How many guys would die for that matchup, and just the name recognition and the notoriety that Brandon Moreno has, man.
It's just wild, especially on an older, not washed Brandon Moreno, but certainly on the back end of his career. I'm not saying Loner Kavanaugh is going to win. He's a sizable underdog, and he should be coming off of that last performance. But the Brandon Moreno you're fighting now is not the Brandon Moreno 2 years ago. And look what the name Brandon Moreno has done for Tatsuro Taira's record. He beat Brandon Moreno. He's going to fight for the championship. So it's a massive opportunity, and in Mexico, massive opportunity.
Exactly. Now, time to get into this card a little bit. I don't know if you have any other fight news or any other topics that you want to talk about before we do run through this main card, but if not,
Gary, what do you think of Ian Gary, Islam Makhachev?
Ian Machado, Gary heading to Georgia, huh?
Yeah.
Did you see what Islam Makhachev had to say about that? He said You can't learn wrestling in 3 months, brother. Charles Oliveira brought in some Iranian, didn't work.
But what that
Ian
signals
Machado,
to me, that's the way they're going.
yes,
And that's
yes,
what that
yes.
signals to me. Yeah.
Ian Machado
So,
Gary did clap back at Islam Makhachev, and he said something along the lines of, "Do not worry, I learn faster than anyone." So interesting stuff. I think that is a very easy matchup for Islam Makhachev, to be quite honest. If Shavkat Rachmanov, we saw him be able to take down Ian Gary and kind of control him in the octagon. I think Islam Makhachev just makes that look a lot easier, man. I think he's just like on a different level. But beside the point there, that is the fight that should be made with Shavkat being out of the picture, just as far as the welterweight division goes. So I am happy with that. I know you are as well. So
yeah, glad Kamaru Usman. I love him, but you got to go beat somebody besides Joaquin Buckley. Yeah.
If he gets one more, I'm fine with it. Yo, they should fucking book him with Leon, bro.
Usman quadrilogy.
Yeah.
I think they might book him with. I think obviously it's Carlos Prates, Jack Della Maddalena, or Michael Morales.
Yep.
I think maybe JDM Kamaru Usman would be like quite interesting, but I want that Prates Morales fight, and like I have said, I want it for a championship, but I don't know if either of those guys are going to be able to get to a championship. So that's kind of the way I would book it. But we talked about it last week. Welterweight, anything at welterweight is just fantastic right now.
No, that's how you book it. You book Morales, Carlos Prates, and you have JDM versus Kamaru Usman. I do not want to see Usman fight Prates. I do not want to see Usman fight Morales. I think that's actually perfect what you did there. But moving on now, UFC Houston main card. Kicking off the main card, we have Zachary Reese taking on Michel Pereira. Zachary Reese is the slight underdog here. Michel Pereira, the favorite. Reese, while he's had a little bit more success recently, has fought absolutely bottom barrel competition, winning 2 of his last 3, and the other one there being the no contest to Cedric Dumas. Now, on the other hand, Michel Pereira is coming off a 3-fight loss streak, with the most recent being a 40-second KO to Kyle Dawkins, who I don't even know who gets KO'd by Kyle Dawkins. I think Kyle Dawkins is decent, but just really, really, really not a good look there in my eyes. Andrew, do you think Michel Pereira has a position, or you think he's in a good position here to bounce back against Zachary Reese?
I mean, look, I've been high on Michel Pereira. He is obviously like wildly exciting. He has just not looked good as of late at all. Like there was one point where he was on that, like I think he was on literally a 9-fight win streak, or 8-fight win streak, and he was the most exciting guy. And Wonder Boy chose not to take the fight with him, and he submitted like Ihor Potieria in Brazil or whatever. But since then, he's not looked good. Now as you said, the competition has gotten worse. Like he got run over by Fluffy Hernandez. We're not going to discredit anybody for getting run over for Fluffy Hernandez. He does that to everybody. But and even Kyle Dawkins has like looked kind of good as of late. But I think Michel Pereira is past it for sure. He's old. Or he's not that old. He's only 32. I don't think Zachary Reese is great either. Quite honestly, I think it's actually like a bottom of the barrel fight. I know Pereira is exciting, but when I look at this matchup, I break it down like any other Michel Pereira fight, which is, can he be aggressive early? And if he's able to land his offense early, he will have success. He's still wildly athletic, wildly powerful. And if he can, I think Zachary Reese, by like grinding him out by decision, is the way to go. But it's a tale of two cities. I would love to see Michel Pereira like at least half interesting at 185 pounds, just because he's fun and exciting, and that's always good in the sport. But I'm a little concerned about him this weekend.
Yeah, I'm actually going to side with Michel Pereira in this fight if I was just picking it. Not something I'd want to throw money on, but I think he's just much more skilled really all around compared to Zachary Reese. And at the end of the day, man, if you really go through Zachary Reese's fight log, you're like, you cannot find fucking worse competition for this guy to fight. Like you have Jackson McVee, who you're fighting for your, what's that, like your 7th fight in the UFC, and 6th, whatever it is. That's the competition you're fighting. And how are you consistently just getting fed these guys that are just like before that, Cedric Dumas? Like, what are we doing here with Zachary Reese? And Michel Pereira, extremely inconsistent. And that Kyle Dawkins fight does scare me. I think Kyle Dawkins actually sparks Zachary Reese too. Like, I think not sparks, probably subs him maybe. Because like I said, I don't know how many people are getting sparked by Kyle Dawkins, but I think Kyle Dawkins beats Zachary Reese. I think like all of the people that Michel Pereira has recently fought are beating Zachary Reese. Now, I don't know if he's durable enough. He kind of scares me. It seems like he gets a little discouraged in the octagon. Like his last fight, it didn't even look like he was trying to win. So that's kind of what scares me a little bit. But I do just think he's way more skilled. And I think he can kind of win this fight anywhere. Like if you were to catch some sort of sub, I wouldn't be shocked, like a club and sub. But I do like Michel Pereira to get the job done here. But again, not a guy that you can really trust.
Nope. I will tell you that's not a fight I'm laying money on this weekend because concerns about Michel Pereira, the gas tank, the focus, he's looked like crap. Concerns because I don't think Zach Reese is very good.
Yeah. Now, moving on, this next fight, this is one that I'm extremely, extremely excited for. We have Jacobe Smith taking on Josiah Harrell. In full disclosure, I'm a big Josiah Harrell fan. I had the opportunity of interviewing Josiah Harrell, talking to him, and I consider him like kind of like a friend. Like if I message him, he'll respond. Just super nice, super just cool, down to earth guy. Great story as well. He was booked to fight JDM back in 2023, believe International Fight Week, weighed in, and then he gets this diagnosis of moya moya, which kind of like restricts blood flow to the brain. So he had to go and get brain surgery, had a year and a half, I believe, to 2 years out of the cage, makes the return, picks up 3 wins in 2025, then comes in beginning of 2026, takes on one of the hottest prospects from Kyrgyzstan, who is in Bilal Muhammad's camp, and goes out there and takes him out. And now he gets thrown in this opportunity to fight a stud specimen prospect in Jacobe Smith, who's just a freak athlete for MMA. A lot of times you don't see like this high level of athletes in the MMA game, and Jacobe Smith is that high level of athlete. Now, Josiah Harrell stepping in short notice to take on Jacobe Smith as a plus 240 underdog. Andrew, do you think Josiah Harrell is a live underdog in this fight?
I actually do. Look, I haven't met the guy. Now here's the thing. I was originally really sad because the Jacobe Smith Jung Park, Jung Ko, I don't know how to say that guy's name. Seung Hyung Ko fight was going to be sick. Like those are, I don't understand why the hell they were booking it. Because like those are like two of your best 5 170 prospects right now. I don't know why we're bashing our action figures together. So I was disappointed when that fight fell. I was annoyed that fight got booked because I thought it was dumb. But like from an actual fight standpoint, I was like, wow, that's an amazing fight. And then I see Josiah Harrell get in, and another guy who I've had my eyes on. I remember when he beat Bekmazara Dosmatov in LFA. Yeah. And that was really impressive in January of this year. And somebody tweeted about it like, this is going to be a guy. Look, I think he actually is going to have a successful UFC career. The athleticism is there. The brain is there. He's smart. His win over Keegan Genrich, I actually remember watching as well in combat something. But to me, the problem is that he's running into Jacobe Smith, who might be the best welterweight prospect on the planet right now. Everything that I think Josiah Harrell does well, Jacobe Smith also does well. And with the added experience in the UFC is my one worry. That Contender Series win from Jacobe Smith against Christian Savoy, who was another highly touted guy at 170 pounds, was a coming out moment for him. And now he's 2-0 in the UFC, both by finish. Look, Nego Price is not that good, whatever. But Preston Parsons is at least decent at welterweight. And so I worry about the experience. We have talked about before that the cage jitters is a real thing. Like fighting in the UFC is different than fighting anywhere else. Even if Josiah's weighed in before, even any of that stuff, weighing in and fighting in the UFC is a little bit different. Now, once in a while, do you get Ethan Ewing, who went out there and blew up my prospect of the year last year? Sure. But I think when you look at a guy in Jacobe Smith who's as athletic and as physical as he is, it's going to be a tough out. Now, with that said, at minus 310, there's some value in there in the sense of I really think Josiah Harrell is good. He's never fought in the UFC before. Maybe people aren't picking him up a lot, but it's a wildly fascinating fight between two guys who I think 5 years from now we will be talking about in the top tier of 170 pounds because of the athleticism, because of the camps they're from. It's a great fight.
And Harrell can fight at 155 as well, too. That's something that I talked to him about. And he's like, listen, man, I kind of like the David versus Goliath story and him taking this fight on short notice. Also, I mean, you're not going to be taking the fight at short notice at 155, but like there's no problem. There's no cut to 70. That's a big worry for Josiah Harrell here. And while taking the fight on short notice, I think that also kind of eliminates the possibility or the opportunity for jitters because you don't even have the time to let yourself get nervous. You have the time to just go. You're hopping on a flight. You're cutting your weight, you're stepping on the scale, and then you're going. And one thing that I really, because you're right to the point when you were talking about the matchup where you're like, the stuff that Josiah Harrell does good, like you think that Jacobe Smith just does a little bit better. And that's the wrestling. I mean, Jacobe Smith, he was a D1 All-American at Oklahoma State, transferred there. He's only there for a year, but was an All-American at Oklahoma State. Very high-level wrestler, very high-level just athlete in general. The striking's a bit iffy in my opinion, but I don't think Harrell's striking's like elite yet either. So yes, I agree, but the difference is I think Jacobe Smith, I think his gas tank's unproven. I think he hasn't fought someone that can give him legit resistance yet. And in that Contender Series fight, I think the gas tank was kind of starting to look a little sketchy too. He's able to find the finish in round 2. So he's still able to find the finish. Same thing in that Nico Price fight. The gas tank wasn't looking great, and he's able to find the finish in round 2. So it's like, how much can you fault him? I don't know, but I think Josiah Harrell is just going to apply a lot much more resistance. And if you looked at his fight against Dazmatov, again, very high-level wrestler, and he was getting the better of Harrell in the wrestling exchanges in round 1. But as fights go on, Josiah Harrell is just able to start hooking people. And as that fight went on, he just absolutely just cooked Dazmatov to the point where his corner threw in the towel in round 3 because they didn't want to see their fighter just get fucking battered the way Josiah Harrell was battering him. So that's the thing. Like, I could see this fight from a betting perspective. If you want to bet on Josiah Harrell, don't bet it before the fight. Live it after round 1. Because round 1, very likely to go to Jacobe Smith. So you're going to get better odds on Josiah Harrell. Because I don't think like plus 240 Vegas has some respect for Josiah Harrell making a fight, making your debut on a week's notice. And you're only plus 240. Like Ethan Ewing was like plus
against him.
Yes. Yeah. Against the Jacobe Smith. So like there's some respect there. I think Jacobe Smith round 1 should be his. Like if Josiah Harrell wins round 1, I would be very surprised, to be honest with you. And I think after round 1, the finishing upside from Smith might start to go down a little bit. And I am expecting Harrell to start picking it up. So you're going to get better odds that way. And it also eliminates the chance of losing in round 1 because Jacobe Smith is very live for a round 1 finish. But I like Harrell in the spot. Very excited for it. And if he's able to get this job done, man, the sky's the limit for Josiah Harrell.
It would be a massive win. It's a great fight. It's probably like it's one of those fights that we talk about when guys are running into each other really early in their career. And you're like, okay, we're going to go back and watch that. Like we just talked about, I don't know if it's Islam Makhachev, Arman Tsarukyan level, but like, it's one of those kind of things where it's like, we're watching both these guys really early in their career. We'll see some high level MMA. I think these guys are a bit raw, but from an athleticism standpoint, I mean, Jacobe Smith is absolutely chiseled. I looked at his like fight day picks today. It's like, oh my gosh, that guy looks like he's built in a lab. Josiah Harrell is too. So it's fun. It's good that we're getting high level mixed martial arts like this so early in these guys' careers because win or loss, it's going to be so beneficial down the line, right? Like Nico Price and Josiah Harrell, just Nico Price old, washed. Josiah Harrell's not. And so for both of these guys to get some experience like that, it's fun, and I'm glad they're doing it.
And both Smith and Harrell are high-level finishers as well. Like Josiah Harrell, 10 of 11 wins by finish. I think Jacobe Smith is 9 of 11. I believe might be 8 of 11. But also, not to just harp on Josiah Harrell so much, but he landed the Mighty Mouse in his last fight against Dazmatov. Didn't finish it, but just the fucking pick up into the armbar, landed it fucking clean. The only reason why I didn't finish it is because he tried to catch the arm in his armpit. And he's like, I let it fucking slip out and I didn't even need to. But just high level fucking grappling. I'm going to send you it. I'm going to send you the tweet of it. And you're going to be like, wow, that's fucking sick. But
send me the clip, man.
I'm gonna send it to you. Moving on now, heavyweight matchup, and we have Sergey Spivac taking on Ante Delija. However, I've said Delija. A lot of people are like, dude, shut the fuck out. I'm like, yeah, my bad. But back to the fight here. Both men are actually coming off a loss to the same guy, and that is Waldo Cortez Acosta. Now, Delija.
Waldo, I'm laughing about Waldo Cortez Acosta. I'm not even laughing about your pronunciation on it.
Hey, Waldo's the man, but Delija, that was a very, very weird fight because I mean, I don't even know how much I've talked about this so many times, but you have the eye poke of Waldo, then you have the fight get called off, then you have the fight go back on, then you have Waldo sparking the training partner of Tom Aspinall. I'm not even going to pronounce his name. Now, the other side of this, you have Sergey Spivac, who like, if he's unable to get this fight to the ground, I don't really see how he's able to win this fight. I think it's like sub him or that's kind of it. I don't know. Do you see another route to victory here for Sergey Spivac outside of like the sub?
Well, I will let you know now that Delija is a minus 140 favorite, and I will have money on that this weekend because I do not think very highly of Sergey Spivak. I think he is. I think we know exactly where his ceiling is. Right? He beats the Marcin Tybura's, the Derek Lewises of the world. He loses to the Jailton Almeida, Cyril Gans of the world. I don't think that Ante Delija is that high, but I think he's close. I think that fight against Waldo Cortez Acosta was just really weird. I think it's hard to judge a guy by that fight because we talked about it. The adrenaline drop of knocking you knock the guy out, and then you didn't knock the guy out, and then you fight, and like literally 8 seconds later, he gets clipped from an overhand right. And Waldo knocks out no one. He does not knock people out. He knocked up there. Okay, maybe he knocks out. I'm a Waldo hater. I'm living on that train. All right, Waldo sucks. And so if you know that was a fluke win. That was a fluke win. So I do still think like Ante Delija is going to be an interesting name at heavyweight. I think the storyline of him training with Aspinall and like if he won that Waldo fight, like we were gonna have some uncomfortable conversations about like who he should be fighting next. I just kind of think Ante's better everywhere. I agree. Sergey's way to win this fight is to do his polar bear Moldovan thing of just like running guys over. But I think Ante's good enough, is in a good enough camp where that's just not going to happen. But it's actually a kind of interesting fight at heavyweight. And because there's so much turnover at heavyweight right now, like it's kind of important. Like it's 7 versus 9, but there's actual consequences for the guy who wins this fight. So I'm excited to see it. And I think Ante Delija is like an exciting addition to heavyweight last year. It got derailed from that fluke ass win. And so, you know, now we'll see how good he actually is.
Yeah, I sent you that Josiah Harrell Mighty Mouse clip, by the way, if you want to check that out. But I'm in agreement here where I just don't really see where Sergey Spivak can really beat Ante Delija outside of just the sub on the ground. I think Ante's tough to take down. I think he's a pretty decent counter wrestler, and he's just solid on the feet, man. Solid all around. I just think it's a very, very good spot for him. And I think it's a good line as well. Minus 140 is a good line. But what'd you make of that?
I'm surprised. You know, I think obviously the books give credit to grappling when it's shown. And Spivak not only has a good ground game, he has a good offensive submission ground game. Like he doesn't just sit and lay on guys. He hit that arm triangle choke against Derek Lewis. He hit the sick arm bar against Marcin Tybura that everyone will forget. But that was actually like a really impressive main event win. But I just think we have seen his ceiling, right? He did not look like who does Jailton Almeida finish in a round? Like no one. And he finished.
You know, you're right.
I was there for that fight. It was in Newark. And so, and like, I always think about that Cyril Gane fight, which was like Cyril Gane showed him movement he'd never seen before. And he looked like a deer in headlights. He's not a guy who absorbs punishment great. So
let me say one thing though.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree on everything you just said there, but I do want to say like Ante Delija has been finished multiple times in his career. And that's pre-UFC and now in the UFC with that weird Waldo fight, which I'm not really putting too much stake in, but we've seen him put away by guys that aren't necessarily on that highest level either. I know heavyweight's a bit of a weird division, but I almost feel like this guy kind of got slated as like a better name or prospect just given his proximity to Tom Aspinall, to be quite honest with you. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I'm rooting for him, man.
I mean, look, like he's 35, but he actually has a really long fight. Like heavyweights are always old, but usually they don't start until later in their career. Like he has fights from like 2012, 2011. Yeah. And he has just like some wins. He knocked out Renan Ferreira, which is a big win. Obviously that's the guy who fought Francis Ngannou last year and got blown up, but like that's a win. Like that's a real win. He fought some other guys in M1 Global, I think, before he was in the PFL. He was in Ryzen. So he's a vet. He has experience, but he certainly is not, you know, indestructible, which is, I think, why the matchup is interesting. But I just trust Ante to be able to keep the fight on the feet.
What'd you make of that Josiah Harrell Mighty Mouse transition too, by the way?
It was pretty impressive. Look, I said, the athleticism's there. I don't know if you're hitting that on Jacobe Smith, but
I don't think so.
it's a hell of a clip. Like the athletic, and Kapost is my guy. That's the best Twitter account of all time. So shout out. The athleticism is there, right? Like that's, and like you can coach that. Even if you go out there and you lose a competitive fight to Jacobe Smith this weekend. If you win, fantastic. You're in another stratosphere. But even if you lose, like to refine your skills this early and get to fight a guy of that caliber this early, it will benefit his career, win or lose. It's going to be fun. Maybe I'm on the train.
Definitely. Come on, hop on the train, man. Hop on the train. We got room. But moving on here to our featured bout, we have Dan 50K Ige taking on Melky Costa. I might like a lot of times I go and try to pronounce the Melquizael Costa. I'm like, dude, I'm just gonna go with Melky Costa. I said this on the Octagon podcast, but Melky Costa is a man who's riding a 5-fight win streak, and most recently coming off that head kick win against Morgan Charrier, which, sheesh, that was impressive, very quick, but very hard to replicate a head kick as well. Dan 50K Ige, dude, he's lost 7 of his last 11. Now, against the top of the top competition, but 7 of his last 11, most recently lost to Patricio Pitbull. Andrew, do you see 50K Ige bouncing back here against Melky Costa?
I think it's now Dan 100K Ige because they changed the bonuses. But look, he was not 50K. He used to be something else, and then he changed it to 50K, and now he's going to have to change it again. I forget his old nickname. Look, Dan Ige will forever be in the Hall of Legends MMA section for taking a fight on 2 hours' notice, literally getting out of his chair and going to fight Diego frickin' Lopez on 2 hours' notice at UFC 303. He will always have respect in my heart. I don't know what the hell they booked him with after. He had to fight like Lerone Murphy and had to fight like all these guys, but he has fought a who's who at featherweight. The worry for me is with Melquizael Costa, and I think that's how you pronounce it, but I'm not 100% sure, is although he is he's the guy fighting up here, he's the guy on the win streak, his wins are actually solid 145-pound names. Morgan Charrier was one of the guys out of France that people said has championship caliber. He has not been that good. He has some struggles on the ground, but we have not seen him be beat on the feet. I had money on Charrier to beat Melquizael Costa because I thought the line was in his way, but beating him, beating Julian Erosa, Christian Rodriguez. He has a win over Christian Rodriguez beats everybody. He beat Raul Rosas Jr. He beat somebody else who was undefeated. Like Christian Rodriguez is another guy who you just don't run into early in your career and beat. Andre Feely, the worry I have in this fight for Dan Ige is it's not like he's fighting a guy who is untested coming up against him, because we have seen Dan Ige knock those people out before. The worry for me is that we are seeing him fight a guy who has proven himself at 145 pounds against elite-ish competition, and then, maybe can finish the job. Like Dan Ige's wins against Sean Woodson. Yes, that was an impressive win, but it was a weird stoppage in Miami. Feely, Nate Landwehr. I think Melquizael is just better than any of those guys. But look, it's a fun fight. Dan Ige is always exciting. Like I said, he will always have respect for me, but I think there's a reason he's fighting Melquizael Costa, and I think that's because the UFC think Costa's going to win.
I'm stealing this from someone. I listen to a lot of MMA stuff, so I'm sorry to whoever I'm stealing this from. They're not that they're listening to me, but someone said it. Yeah, someone said it has to go to 100 grand Dan. And I'm like, yeah, no, that flies.
That's live.
You go from the 50K Ige to the 100 grand Dan. So I think that plays very well. But the main thing that kind of stuck out to me about this fight is just Melky Costa is just a much better minute winner than Dan Ige, and Dan Ige just has low output. And if Melky Costa is able to sit at range and just, throw his kicks at Dan Ige, and both guys just kind of low level takedown defense, both guys can get taken down. Melky Costa probably holds the advantage in the grappling, if anything there. And I think if he's able to sit at range and just kind of kick Dan Ige and win minutes, it's going to be tough for Ige unless he is able to really get into the pocket and land something big to kind of squeak out these rounds. I think Melky's just going to kind of cook him and just win minutes and ultimately steal rounds and just win the fight that way. Ige is extremely durable, so I don't know if I see Melky Costa getting Dan Ige out of there. I'd probably lean Melky Costa by decision, and maybe Dan Ige can land a nuke in there and get Melky Costa out of there, if anything. But I like Melky Costa in this spot.
And that's kind of the path, I think, for Dan Ige. Like in Melquizael Costa's 2 losses in the UFC, both have been by finish. He was knocked out by somebody, and then he was submitted in his first fight in the UFC. But that kind of, to me, is the X factors. Like Dan does have some serious power at 145 pounds. We've seen him knock guys out. That knockout of Andre Feely is an absurd overhand right. But yeah, I do worry about him at range with a guy like Melquizael Costa, who has proven himself against elite guys to be that good. And Ige's fought for a while. He has a lot of fight miles on him. I remember when he main evented against Calvin Kattar at Fight Island, right? He's 34 for a featherweight, not young. I think we're looking at this fight the same way.
Yeah, definitely. Now, moving on to our co-main here, we have now sober Jeff Neal, hands of steel at -205, taking on Uros Medic at +170. And I'm just going to guess, do you have this fight not going the distance too? Like, I don't see this fight going the distance.
I think Jeff Neal actually could win a decision. I don't think Uros Medic could win a decision, but I think Jeff Neal could.
I think Medic is a little bit chinny too, though.
Yeah, for sure. But Jeff Neal's not a finisher. You know what I mean? Like, you don't knock people out.
But you got the nickname Hands of Steel. Come on.
I don't know what to tell you. He stared at Ian Gary for 15 minutes and watched him circle around. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, but Ian Gary's a tricky puzzle to solve. You don't see too many people solving, the Ian Gary puzzle. That's a difficult one.
Fight go the distance bet is, oh my God, is it really -750?
To go the
That's
distance?
absurd. No, it's like not go the distance.
Not to go the distance. It's minus. Yeah, I was about to say, like, Jesus, -750. Because Jeff Neal's coming off, the KO to Carlos Prates, and then Uros Medic is like, I'm going to get knocked out or knock you out kind of guy in this spot, I think, right?
All right, so let's talk about Jeff Neal, because I think Jeff Neal is like one of the most interesting cases at 170 pounds. I have forever thought Jeff Neal was like the guy who needed a new coach. No offense, Saif Saud, whatever you're doing down there in Houston, but Jeff Neal was always like one step away, right? Before Ian Machado Gary, the trivia question of who gave Khamzat Chimaev his hardest fight in the UFC was Jeff Neal. That fight was UFC 285. It was the John Jones Cyril Gane card. Jeff Neal took Shavkat to war. He got finished in the third by that like standing rear naked choke. It was a sick choke that he finished him with. But Jeff Neal looked very good in that fight, right? Jeff Neal, look, the fight against Ian Machado Gary was like not a aesthetically pleasing fight, but I think it went to split decision. It was a close fight. He knocked out Vicente Luque when that was still like a thing. I have always felt that Jeff Neal stylistically is very good. The worry I have with Jeff Neal is he's chinny and he does not throw enough offense. And I feel like we say that a lot about a lot of guys, but this applies to no one better than Jeff Neal. I had a bet on Jeff Neal to beat Carlos Prates last year, and I was feeling really good about it for 3 minutes. And then it started to wane a little bit. And then obviously he got sent to the shadow realm with the spinning elbow. So I think Jeff Neal is a fascinating bet. I think he beats guys that he's better than. But the worry for me here is Uros Medic has knockout power. Like cannot be argued, has knockout power. And Jeff Neal can be chinny. And I think especially later on in fights, he can get hit. But I think the -750 line is absurd. I might bet to not go the distance, just to sprinkle that, because like I could totally see Jeff Neal to go the distance. Yeah. I could totally see Jeff Neal just like circling around Uros Medic for 15 minutes and winning a splitty, 100%.
And what do you make of Jeff Sober? Jesus Christ, Jeff Neal coming out saying he's sober now following that KO loss to Carlos Prates? I guess that kind of opened his eyes a little bit. Do you put any stake into that as far as his performance goes?
I don't know. I feel like there's always something with a fighter,
Yeah.
right? I feel like every camp's their best camp, and every camp they're making an improvement. The problem I've had with Neal is he just hasn't been active. He fought once last year. He fought twice in 2024, and one of the, those were fluke. He had that fluke win against Rafael dos Anjos where the RDA basically just tore his knee in Abu Dhabi. Like, I would just like to see Jeff Neal more active on the back end of his career. So I don't know if I make anything out of his, about the drinking stuff, and he obviously took some time off from that pretty brutal knockout, but this is a big fight for him. Like if he wins this fight, keeps himself in the top 15 at 170 pounds. If he loses this fight, he's, I don't know if he's getting pink papers, but they might be coming.
Yeah, and I actually did pick Jeff Neal as well in my original podcast, and I'm going to pick him here as well. And I feel a little weird doing so because a lot of it comes down to just the fact that he's been in there and fought the better guys, and he's just been across like the Ian Machado Garys, the Shavkat Rachmanovs, the Carlos Prateses, and he's been fighting him for such a long time where Uros Medic hasn't. But then last fight, I'm talking about Dan Ige and Melky Costa, and I have Melky Costa winning, so it's like contradicting myself in a stupid point, different scenarios here, but I do like the spot for Jeff Neal. Not completely sold on Uros Medic yet, but the power is concerning coming off that loss to Carlos Prates. So if he does get, nuked early, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, I think Medic has looked really good. I think he's 3-1 in his last 4. His that loss to Punahel Soriano wasn't great, but losing to Miktabek Oralbai is never a bad thing.
Punahele Soriano is just not that like.
I know. Yeah, I agree. He's not that good, which kind of worries me. But the
Yeah.
knockout of Gilbert Urbino was impressive. The knockout against Muslim Salikov at the end of the year last year in the Apex was pretty impressive. Like, he has some wins, he has some power, but like, I just think Jeff Neal is the more technical striker. I think he's just going to be able to beat him on the feet.
Yeah. Now, moving on, man, to our main event. This one is just extremely fascinating in terms of styles, because you have two guys that really have similar styles as far as just having pressure-based, being on the front foot, attacking styles go, but just in two completely different aspects. Sean Strickland in the striking sense, where he's just constant pressure, and Fluffy Hernandez in the grappling sense, constantly taking you down, doesn't care if you get back up. A lot of times he'll let you back up just to take you down again and make you constantly work. And I'm very curious to see who wins this battle of pressure. Andrew, who do you foresee winning that battle?
Such a good fight. I said at the beginning of the year that it was the best non-championship fight booked up until this point. And I feel this way. I still feel this way. I'm really looking forward to this weekend. And that is mostly because of Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Since he submitted Rodolfo Vieira, and look, like, Rodolfo was totally gassed out, and Joe Rogan literally talks about that submission more than like any other choke in the history of the sport. But since he did that, he has just been on a total, complete crash course of just winning fights. He does not lose. He does not lose. And what has been so impressive to me in his last couple of wins is he has had a couple of fights where he did not have his fastball and still can find ways to win. And that, to me, is a championship caliber trait. There are guys who, when they have their A game, are the best fighter in the world. We've seen that multiple times. But I think what's more impressive to me about Anthony Hernandez is he did not have a great first round against Roman Kopylov. He did not. He was totally banged up. He was super injured. I think he had staph for the fight against Brendan Allen. And he won both of those fights. He submitted Roman Kopylov, and he beat Brendan Allen in Seattle when he totally did not have his fastball. And we know how good Brendan Allen is. Beat Martin Vettori, just beat Renier de Ritter last year. He has that, to me, has shown me a lot about Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. And then when you take all that away and you just look at the skill, he is incredible on the feet. He's not on the feet, but the way he implements his game plan, we talk about it all the time. You talked about it last week. I listened to that short like 3 times because it's so smart. Making the fight your fight is maybe the most effective thing you can do in modern mixed martial arts. And there might not be a better guy on the roster that does that as well as Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. The way he blew through Roman Dolidze last year was one of the most impressive performances of the year. No one talked about it that much because I don't think Roman Dolidze he's definitely not on the level of Sean Strickland. But the way a top 15 middleweight getting bullied like that, and the way he cranked a rear naked choke and basically just threw him to the ground, it's the most savage finish ever. So anytime you get a chance to watch him compete, I think it's exciting. Like, I have been excited to watch Anthony Fluffy Hernandez compete in the last couple times. And then you look at the opponent in Sean Strickland, and it's a guy who on paper could give him problems. I'm not sure that he will. I am picking Anthony Hernandez to win this fight. But I do think when you talk about a veteran who can make a good game plan, that is Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland has not looked great in the last couple of fights. He did not look good. He beat Paulo Costa, but that was not an exciting fight by any stretch of the imagination. And the fight against Dricus Du Plessis last February in Australia was not a good fight. But neither you or I will discredit the skill of former UFC middleweight champion Sean Strickland and the wrestling pedigree of Sean Strickland. So I think it's a wildly interesting fight. I'm curious to hear your opinion, and then I think maybe we could talk about some of the X's and the O's. But I'm picking Fluffy Hernandez, and we'll talk about why. But I mean, if he beats Sean Strickland, he's fighting for the UFC championship. And there's an argument if Sean Strickland beats Fluffy Hernandez because Sean holds a win over number 1 contender Nasruddin Imavov, he's fighting Khamzat Chimaev for the UFC middleweight championship. So title eliminator with a crowd, with one of the more exciting guys in the sport right now in Fluffy Hernandez. It's a good fight. I'm really looking forward to Saturday.
Yeah, man. Imavov fucked up not putting away Caio Barajo, man, because you really left the door open. And the fact that nothing's booked yet and nothing will be announced at least until after this fight, you'd assume, makes things a bit interesting there. And it was just so cold how Fluffy just discarded Roman Dolidze. And I think that's the word I would use, is just got rid of him. Now, this fight with Sean Strickland, I am going to agree with you. I'm going to go Fluffy Hernandez, although I think Strickland can make this fight interesting just with the counter wrestling. He is a good counter wrestler, and if he is able to control distance with that jab and the teep, things get interesting. But I think Fluffy's pressure is just too much, and Strickland's not going to be able to get anything off all night, and he's just going to be worried about playing defense, constantly getting taken down, constantly worried about getting back up. And Strickland does have a good get up game, and I think his gas tank's completely fine as well. But he's just going to get, I can just see him getting frustrated, man, where you're constantly on the ground, getting back up, on the ground, getting back up, on the ground, getting back up. You're throwing absolutely nothing. The volume's not there. You're just constantly working, and you just like, we're not even fighting right now. Like, just be a man and just be a man and stand with me, Anthony. And it's just not going to happen. And he's just going to get so flustered. And that's just how I foresee the fight going. Are you in agreement there?
Yeah. The main concern with me about Strickland is, like, from a pure technical standpoint, I think Strickland trains with enough wrestling talent, and honestly has enough wrestling talent where, like, I don't know if he could stop Fluffy Hernandez for 5 rounds, but maybe he could give him some difficulties. The main worry with me on Strickland is output, is offensive output. You know, Fluffy Hernandez is going to throw 400 strikes, shoot 30 takedowns. Like, he's middleweight Marab. It's a little bit, it looks a little bit different because his ground and pound and his control is probably better
Like
than
the
Marab.
Cradles and different,
right. He's better on the fence. Like, go read Open Note Grappling's essay about Fluffy Hernandez on the fence this week. He is a magician. When he has you backed up, he's very good. Now, Strickland doesn't always get backed up, and I think that's one of the problems that Fluffy Hernandez is going to have to solve. But the worry for me is the output of Sean Strickland. I just do not think he is going to keep up offensively with what Anthony Hernandez is giving him. So maybe he does look good for 5 minutes, right? Maybe he does get his jab out there early. He cuts Fluffy. He kind of dissuades him. But second round, third round, fourth round, I just don't see a scenario where Fluffy Hernandez doesn't get the ball rolling. It feels like he's fighting you. He's going downhill and you're going uphill. Like, that's what it looks like when you watch him compete. The other question I have for you that I think is another monstrous X factor in this fight is, you know, the submission game of Fluffy Hernandez. You come into one of these scenarios where he doesn't blow his gas tank, but it's not like Strickland is a guy who's had a questionable gas tank. Like, went 5 rounds with Dricus du Plessis twice, beat Israel Adesanya over 5 rounds. Like, Strickland has a very solid gas tank at 185. Is that something you're concerned about, in the sense of, like, you think Strickland might gas out, or you think it'll just be like Fluffy just out techniquing him?
I think it's just going to be like an out volume, but like volume, how you touched on, I don't even know if it's going to come in the sense of like just an out pressure where Strickland's unable to get his volume off. That's just how I see it going. And the way I think Strickland can win this fight is it's kind of similarly to that Izzy fight, where he needs to land something big early and kind of change the outlook of the fight and really make Fluffy Hernandez respect him early, man. Like, when he cracked Izzy and dropped him in that fight in round 1 and then was swarming him all over him, like, that changed the whole rest of that fight, man. And that's kind of the way, and might be the only way I see him beating Fluffy Hernandez here, and kind of get Fluffy a little tentative to go and shoot. But I don't know, man. Strickland lacks like the knees and the elbows and the different weapons that would be very useful with Fluffy Hernandez constantly entering. And I just don't see him damaging Fluffy as he kind of crosses that void, you know?
And that's kind of my other concern with Strickland, is like, there are matchups you could convince me of at 185 where a guy is powerful enough, like can hit hard enough, where he can kind of dissuade Fluffy from just collapsing the distance like he does. Like Nasruddin Imavov, with the power he possesses, he's not like a pure knockout artist, but like, he hits harder than Sean Strickland does on the feet. I think, I don't know if he's better than Sean Strickland on the feet, but he hits harder than him. Like, that's a scenario where I could see Fluffy dissuaded, or someone who could match him on the ground. Khamzat Chimaev, obviously. But the other worry for me is, like, is Fluffy concerned about the offense coming back at him? You're concerned about volume over time, right? Strickland's jab is one of the best jabs in the sport. he pops that, he breaks your nose, he cuts your eye or something. Now you have a problem. But like when Fluffy's crashing in to blast a double leg or trying to hit a trip on the fence, like, is he worried about something that's going to really hurt him offensively? I don't think so. I think it's a really tough matchup for Strickland. I think it is stylistically tough.
Yeah, I don't think he has the power to match the pressure that's coming from Fluffy's direction. So we're both in complete agreement there. So yeah, I'm on Fluffy in this one. I honestly agree on the money line here with Fluffy stamped at about a -300 favorite. Like, I think that's pretty smack on. Maybe you can find a little value on Sean Strickland here if you do like Sean. But yeah, I think it's going to be like a 49-46 Fluffy probably.
Yeah, I'm putting this in the wilderness now, so it's on the record. I believe that Fluffy Hernandez will beat Khamzat Chimaev this year. I truly believe, bro. Watching his film, thinking about the two fights that Khamzat struggled with the most in Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman, I think Fluffy is bigger than those guys. I think he's more powerful and has a better gas tank than those guys. I'm all in. Like, my end of year champ was Fluffy Hernandez, 185 pounds. It was my dark horse pick of the year. I've got a lot riding on this weekend. If he wins and he goes out there and he does what I think he will do to Sean Strickland, and I'm not even sure he will finish him because Sean is so tough. Like, I think Pereira is the only person to finish Strickland in the UFC. I think so. If he goes out there and does what I think he will do to Sean Strickland this weekend, and like, we're going to be looking at that Khamzat fight like, I don't know. Because I truly think he's the only guy on the ground in 185 that can match Khamzat. That's the only guy. I think he can get up. Like, that's what it is. And Khamzat looked good against Dricus 2+C, but that was his fight. If Fluffy lands a takedown, Fluffy puts Khamzat on his ass. I've been on the Fluffy Hernandez train for a little bit. Maybe he gets crushed this weekend and I look like a total idiot, but that's the pick. I'm looking forward to the rest of the world getting to see him compete because he's fought on like Apex shows, he's fought on co-main events, he's done some main events in the Apex, but he's never done a main event in front of a live crowd. Like, I think everyone's going to be going like, holy shit, this guy can fight. But we'll see.
Yeah, super excited for him, man. Super, super excited. Big fan of Fluffy here. I know a lot of the boys are in and around the Octagon crew, so should be an absolute banger. And I want to say that's all I have on my end. Thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk some fights with me. Always appreciate it, man. And for everyone listening, please drop a like, comment, sub. Everything's always greatly appreciated. And let's enjoy some fights Saturday. We got a good card coming your way.
Houston, baby. Let's go.
Let's go.